They say the road has a memory, that every mile of asphalt you cover has been covered 1,000,000 times before by guys just like me, hauling everything from toothpicks to turbine engines. And in all those miles, stories get pressed into the tar like tire tracks. Most are bull. Stories about ghost hitchhikers or UFOs over Arizona. You hear 'em, you chuckle, you drink your coffee and move along. But there's one story they tell out here in the long, flat dark of West Texas that nobody chuckles at. It's the one about the bone dog. The legend is simple, and that's what makes it stick. Sometime way back, a man broke down out here somewhere between El Paso and nowhere. He had a dog with him, a loyal mutt who'd ridden shotgun for thousands of miles. The man decided to walk for help, but he couldn't take the dog. So he chained it to the bumper of his dead truck with a little water and promised he'd be back. He never came back. Maybe he got a ride and forgot. Maybe he got bit by a rattler. Doesn't matter. The dog waited. It waited through the sun and the cold nights. It waited until the water was gone. It waited until there was nothing left but sun-bleached bones, still held together by that rusty chain and a loyalty stronger than death.
Now they say its spirit still runs the highway, the bone dog. It's not angry. It's not looking for revenge. It's just running, looking for its master, maybe. They say it's a skeleton, pure white, that moves with an unnatural speed, a clattering sound, a bone on asphalt that you can just barely hear over the roar of your own diesel engine. It will pace your truck for a mile or two, its empty eye sockets fixed on something far down the road. Then it vanishes. Seeing it isn't the curse. The curse comes after. If you see the bone dog, the legend says, someone you love will be dead within 24 hours. I had heard the story 100 times at dusted truck stops from guys with eyes like road maps, over the CB from lonely voices in the dark. I never believed it. It was just a story to keep you awake when the white line started to hypnotize you. Until last night.
I was hauling a load of industrial piping to Houston. The stretch of I-10 past Fort Stockton is maybe the emptiest place in the country. It's just you, your headlights cutting a tunnel through the darkness, and the vast, starry sky that feels like it's about to swallow you whole. It was about 2 a.m. I was feeling the miles, my eyes gritty with fatigue, the cab filled with the stale smell of coffee and the drone of the engine. That's when I saw it. It started as a flicker in my passenger side mirror, a flash of white against the black desert. I blinked, figuring it was a highway marker or a piece of trash caught in the wind. But it was there again, keeping pace. I risked a glance out the window, and my heart stopped. It was a dog, but it was all wrong. It was made of bone, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Every rib, every vertebra perfectly clear. It ran with a liquid grace that shouldn't be possible, its feet not seeming to touch the ground. Yet I could swear, I heard it. A faint, dry, clattering sound, like a bag of spilled dominoes. Click, click, click. It was keeping up with my rig doing 65 miles an hour without any effort at all. It turned its head and looked right at me. There was nothing in its sockets, just the black, endless desert night looking back through them. There was no menace in that look, just a deep, profound loneliness, an eternal patience. I stared for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 10 seconds. My hands were gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. My breath was trapped in my chest. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it veered away from the highway and dissolved back into the darkness. One moment it was there, a perfect skeleton in motion. The next, it was gone.
The only thing left was the hum of my engine and the thunder of my own heart, and the story that was no longer just a story. I've been driving ever since. The sun came up a few hours ago, painting the desert in harsh, beautiful colors that I can't appreciate. My phone sits on the passenger seat. My wife's name is on the screensaver, smiling. I want to call her. I need to hear her voice. I need to call my mother, my brother. But I'm terrified, because the clock started ticking the moment that dog disappeared. And I don't want to be the one on the phone when it runs out.
The first 100 miles after the sighting were pure automated instinct. My body drove the truck, but my mind was back on that stretch of empty road, replaying the image over and over. The flawless white of the bones, the impossible speed, the hollow eyes. I tried to find a rational explanation. It was a trick of the light, a stray coyote, skinny and pale, maybe a plastic Halloween skeleton someone threw out their window, caught in a dust devil by the side of the road. But the sound, that's the part I can't explain away. The click, clack, clack. It was too distinct, too rhythmic. It was the sound of something real that had no business being real.
I finally pulled into a brightly lit rest stop just as the first hint of dawn was bruising the eastern sky. The air was cool and crisp. A couple of other rigs or parks, their engines idling with a low rumble, the sounds of sleeping giants. I killed my engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. It left too much room for my thoughts. I made a pot of coffee on the little burner I keep in the cab. My hands were shaking so badly that it spilled the grounds all over the counter. As I sat there, watching the dark liquid drip, my eyes kept going to the phone. Sarah, my wife, would be waking up soon, getting ready for her day teaching second graders. She always called me around 7 a.m. for our morning check-in. It was our ritual. My thumb hovered over her contact photo, her squinting in the sun at a family barbecue, a genuine, unguarded smile on her face. A wave of love and dread washed over me so strong it almost made me sick. What if I called and she didn't answer? What would I do? Drive the next 1,000 miles in a blind panic? Or worse, what if she did answer? What if we had a perfectly normal conversation? Morning, hon. How's the road? Fine, Sarah. Almost in Houston. How are you? Good. Just heading out the door. Love you. Love you too. And then an hour later, what? A call from a state trooper? A hospital? The thought of our last words being so mundane, so unaware, was a new kind of horror.
The phone buzzed in my hand, making me jump and slosh hot coffee on my leg. I cursed, my heart hammering against my ribs. But it wasn't Sarah. It was a text from my brother, Mark. A stupid meme of a cat falling off a sofa. Normally, I'd have laughed. This morning, it felt like a message from a different universe, one where things were still funny and normal. I stared at the text for a full minute. Was this a sign? A hello from him to prove he was okay? Or was it the before? The last silly thing he'd ever send me? I put the phone face down. I couldn't do it. I couldn't make the call. Not yet. It felt like playing Russian roulette with the people I cared about. As long as I didn't call, I could pretend I didn't know. I could exist in this bubble of terrible uncertainty, which was somehow better than a terrible certainty.
I got back on the road. The sun was fully up now, a merciless white disk in the sky. The world looked sharp and unforgiving. Every road sign, every billboard seemed to carry a hidden meaning. Exit 241, Ozona. Was that a bad omen? Jesus is the answer. Was it a warning? My mind was twisting everything, looking for clues, for some kind of way to control this. The highway was getting busier now. Cars with families heading off on vacation. Other trucks on their long, lonely journeys. I looked at the faces of the people in the cars next to me. A mother smiling at her kids in the back seat. A young couple holding hands. They were all living in the normal world. A world without skeletal dogs and 24-hour clocks.
I felt like a ghost, separated from them by a thin pane of glass and a terrible secret.
My dispatcher crackled over the radio, a blast of static and a cheerful voice asking for my ETA. I answered, my voice hoarse, robotic. It felt like I was acting in a play, the part of a truck driver, a normal truck driver, on a normal run. But inside, I was a man counting down the minutes, terrified of what the end of the day would bring.
By midday, the caffeine had worn off, and the adrenaline had been replaced by a deep, grinding exhaustion. The fear hadn't gone away. It had just settled in my bones, a cold, heavy weight. I needed fuel, and more importantly, I needed to see a human face that wasn't trapped behind glass. I needed to know if I was going insane. I pulled into a huge Flying J truck stop near Junction. It was a hive of activity. Drivers coming and going, the smell of diesel, fried chicken, and stale coffee all mingling in the hot air. I filled up my tank, my movements slow and deliberate, then went inside.
The diner was mostly empty, caught in the lull between the breakfast and lunch rushes. I took a booth in the corner and ordered coffee I didn't want. And then I saw him. He was sitting at the counter, a guy who must have been in his late 70s. His face was a road map, just like they say. Every line a testament to 1,000,000 miles on the road. He had a faded denim shirt, a greasy baseball cap, and hands that looked like they were carved from old wood. He nursed a cup of coffee and stared out the window with the patient, steady gaze of a man who's seen it all. I didn't know what I was going to say. How do you walk up to a stranger and ask him about a ghost dog without getting laughed out of the state? But I had to. I took my mug, walked over, and slid into the stool next to him. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. He gave me a slow once-over and grunted, which I took as a yes. We sat in silence for a minute, the only sound the clink of spoons and the low hum of the refrigerators. "Long haul?" he asked, his voice a low gravel. "Houston," I said. "Came in from California." "Ah, the I-10." He nodded, a knowing look in his eye. "She's a lonely stretch." This was it, my opening. I took a breath. "It's more than lonely," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You see things out there, in the dark." He turned his head fully toward me now, his eyes sharp and clear. "What do you see, son?" "You gotta think I'm crazy. After 50 years behind the wheel, very much they can surprise me. Try me."
I told him everything. About the white flicker in the mirror, the perfect skeleton, the silent, effortless run. And the sound, the click, clack, clack. I expected him to shake his head, to tell me I was tired, to lay off the energy drinks. He didn't. He just listened, his expression unchanging. When I was finished, he took a long, slow sip of his coffee. "The bone dog," he said, not as a question, but as a statement. My blood ran cold. "It's real?" I whispered. "As real as the road," he said quietly. "As real as death. A lot of old-timers have seen it. Not many talk about it. Bad luck."
He looked down into his mug. "The story you heard is mostly right, but people get one thing wrong. They think it's a curse. They think the dog is some evil thing, a bringer of death." He looked back at me, his eyes boring into mine. "It's not. The dog isn't bringing death. Death is already coming. The car that's gonna lose control, the heart that's gonna give out, the sickness that's gonna take its final turn, that's already set in motion. Fate, God, whatever you want to call it, has already made the decision. The dog, it doesn't choose, it just knows. It's a courtesy, I figure, a warning from the road itself, a messenger." I felt a new kind of chill. This was worse. The idea that this was some random malevolent force was one thing. The idea that it was an inevitable, scheduled event was another. It removed any hope.
They also say The old man continued, lowering his voice even more, "that it appears to the one who is farthest away, the one who can't get there in time to say goodbye. It's the road's way of letting you be there, in a manner of speaking. To bear witness. Bear witness." The words hung in the air between us. I wasn't being hunted. I was being notified. "So, there's nothing I can do?" I asked, my voice cracking. The old man gave me a sad, weary smile. "Call your people, son," he said, softly. "Don't ask if they're okay. Just tell them you love them. That's all you can do. Then you get back in your rig and you drive." He put a couple of dollars on the counter, gave my shoulder a firm squeeze, and walked out without another word. I sat there, my coffee cold, staring at my reflection in the dark liquid. The face looking back at me was the face of a man who was no longer a skeptic. He was a witness, and his watch was almost over.
Leaving that truck stop felt like walking out of a church into a war zone. The old driver's words hadn't calmed me. They'd given my fear a shape, a name, and a terrible purpose. I was no longer just a guy who saw some weird. I was a witness. The cab of my truck, usually my sanctuary, felt like a cage. The sun was starting to dip in the sky, casting long, distorted shadows across the highway that my tired mind kept shaping into lanky, running figures. I turned on the radio, desperate for a distraction, but every song seemed to be about loss. A country singer crooning about a last goodbye, a rock ballad about time running out. I snapped it off, the silence rushing back in, thick and heavy with anticipation.
The clock on my dashboard was my enemy. Every minute that ticked by was a minute closer. I had maybe 8 hours left in the 24-hour window. I found myself calculating time zones. It was late afternoon here in Texas. Back home in California, Sarah would be finishing the school day. My mother, retired in Florida, would be having her early dinner. My brother Mark was 3 hours ahead on the East Coast, probably getting off work. Who was it? The question hammered at my brain, a merciless, repeating drumbeat. Then, my phone rang.
The sound shattered the silence. It was loud, shrill, and violent. I flinched so hard the whole rig swerved, earning an angry horn blast from a car I was passing. I wrestled the truck back into my lane, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. I looked at the screen. Sarah! My blood turned to ice. This was it, the moment I had been dreading. What do I do? If I answer, what will I hear? Her voice for the last time? Or worse, a stranger's voice, a policeman on the scene of an accident? If I don't answer, I'll never forgive myself. My hand was shaking as I swiped to accept the call. I put it on speaker, unable to hold it to my ear. Hello? My voice was a dry croak.
"Hey, honey, you sound terrible. Everything okay?" Her voice. It was her voice, bright, cheerful, and completely, blissfully normal. A tidal wave of relief so powerful it left me lightheaded, threatened to pull me under. Yeah, just a long day," I managed to say. "Tired." "Well, I'm calling with good news. Remember my principal, Mrs. Davidson, the one who's been out on medical leave? She's recovering so well. The doctors are amazed. Everyone was so worried, but it looks like she's going to be just fine." She kept talking, chattering about her day, about a funny thing a student said, about what we should do this weekend when I got back. And I just listened, my throat tight. Every normal, happy word was a beautiful, painful gift. It wasn't her, the thought repeated in my head. It's not her. Thank God it's not her.
But as the relief began to fade, a new, colder logic took its place. The old man said the dog shows itself to the one who is farthest away. Sarah was home. She was fine. But my mother was in Florida. My brother was in Virginia. I still had family spread across the country. The phone call hadn't saved anyone. It had just crossed a name off a terrible, invisible list. "I have to go, sweetie. Got a parent conference," she said. "Drive safe. I love you. I love you too, Sarah, I said, putting every ounce of meaning I could into the words. More than anything. I know, she said, her voice warm. Talk to you tonight. The line went dead. I was alone again in the cab, the setting sun now bathing everything in a fiery, apocalyptic orange. The call hadn't been an end. It had been a fork in the road of my dread. I looked at the dashboard clock. The countdown continued, and the list of names was getting shorter.
The last few hours of the 24-hour window were the strangest. The raw, high-pitched panic, it burned itself out, leaving behind it kind of numb, surreal calm. There was nothing I could do. I was 1,500 miles from my brother and 2,000 from my mother. The old man was right. I was just the witness. My job now was simply to keep my truck on the road and wait for the news. Night fell again, bringing with it the same impenetrable darkness that had delivered the apparition in the first place. The road emptied out as I neared the outskirts of Houston. The lights of the city created a pale dome of a glow on the horizon, a false dawn. It felt like I'd been driving for 100 years, that I was some kind of modern-day Flying Dutchman cursed to haul freight down an endless highway. My phone had been silent for hours. I'd started to feel a sliver of hope, a desperate, illogical thought that maybe, just maybe, the legend was wrong. Maybe I'd been tired. Maybe I dreamed it. Maybe the 24 hours would pass and everything would be okay. It was almost 2 a.m., exactly 24 hours after I'd seen the bone dog. The silence in my cab felt sacred, like the air in a held breath.
Then the phone rang. It wasn't Sarah's ringtone. It was my brother, Mark. I pulled the truck over onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching loudly under the heavy tires. I killed the engine. This time, there was no hesitation, no denial. I knew this was the call. I answered.
Mark? Hey, his voice was Dick, strained. He was trying to sound normal, but he was failing. Listen, I've got some bad news. I closed my eyes. What is it? It's Mom, he said, and his voice finally broke. She had a stroke a few hours ago. It was massive. She's gone. She died about an hour ago. I'm so sorry. I was with her. She didn't suffer.
I didn't say anything. I just listened to my brother sobbing quietly across the country. My mother. She was old. Her health wasn't the best, but it was still a shock. A sudden, brutal finality. I felt a profound grief, a deep, hollow ache in my chest. But underneath it, shamefully, there wasn't surprise. I had been expecting this call all day. I had been mourning for 24 hours without knowing exactly for whom. We talked for a while. Practical things, plans, flights. I told him I'd dump my load in Houston and head for the airport. He told me he loved me. I told him I loved him too. We hung up.
I sat there in the dark, the lights of my truck illuminating a small patch of dirt and dry grass by the side of the interstate. It was over. The legend was true. The bone dog hadn't been a threat. It hadn't caused this. It had just been a messenger. A courtesy, the old man called it. A strange, terrifying, and somehow compassionate gesture from the road itself. A way to prepare me. A way to let me bear witness from 1,000 miles away. I don't tell this story at drug stops. I'm not that old man at the counter, not yet. But I think about it every time I'm on a long, dark stretch of road. The road has a memory, and now I'm part of it. I carry that image with me. A skeletal dog, running with an impossible silent grace, its empty eyes not looking at me, but looking down the long road ahead, seeing the destination long before any of the other of us can. And it's a cold comfort, but a comfort nonetheless, to know that when your time comes, somewhere out in the lonely dark, a fellow traveler will be notified. The road will let someone know. The road remembers its own.